Altcoins are currently down over 60% from their March highs, so is this the opportunity we've been waiting for, or is this the end? Make sure you watch the whole video to find out my exact plan going into the next few weeks. But before we begin, please make sure you read this disclaimer, as the crypto market is highly volatile and most investors actually lose money by investing in it. Also, all the information presented in this video represents solely my personal opinion and should not be considered financial advice, as I strongly encourage you to do your own due diligence. Hello everyone, my name is Luca and welcome in today's video, in which I'll cover the Confluences I'm currently looking at on altcoins, as well as the exact projects I've accumulated over the past few weeks. Now, the most important Confluences are dominances. So we have three types of dominances. The first one is the Bitcoin dominance, which we look at to confirm the performance of Bitcoin relative to altcoins and whether or not investors are willing to take risks and invest into altcoins, or if they want and prefer something a little safer, such as Bitcoin. The second one are the stablecoin dominances, which are mainly the USDT Dominance and the USDC Dominance, which we want to look at to confirm whether or not investors seek safety into these stablecoins, which are not volatile. And the third and most important one when we refer to altcoins is the others dominance, which represents the dominance of the cryptocurrencies excluding the top 10 by market capitalization. Now let's see how the charts are looking at and what we could expect in the next few days and weeks. Moving on to the charts, we have the Bitcoin dominance. Now, as we can see, for the last 1 year and a half, it has formed this massive rising channel and is now currently testing the upper resistance of this channel. Meanwhile, it is currently testing this high time frame resistance range as well, which started back in March 2021, and now it is testing it again. So from a technical perspective, the Bitcoin dominance looks incredibly weak, and with the upcoming risk-on environment in which I think we're currently transitioning into, in which investors will be willing to take on more risks, I think altcoins will perform really good. Now, the Bitcoin dominance is very telling because it influences how Bitcoin as well as altcoins perform. So we must pay attention to the Bitcoin dominance in order to predict accurately how altcoins will perform in the next few weeks. Now, I personally think that the Bitcoin dominance will top around 60 to 61%. So somewhere between these two lines will be our top. And so when we have a correction in the Bitcoin dominance, that's when we will see altcoins massively outperforming. So I'm personally expecting something along these lines. And when this correction happens, when this downtrend begins, that's when we'll see altcoins massively outperforming Bitcoin and the rest of other assets, which is why I'm currently positioning myself and accumulating as much as I can in this high time frame bottom range in which I think altcoins are currently in. So when we will see this downtrend and correction in the Bitcoin dominance and altcoins start outperforming Bitcoin, I will be well positioned, because when we reach those parabolic phases, we want to sell. Now, adding some technical indicators such as the RSI, MACD, and TSI, which are strength indicators that we need to pay attention to, we can clearly see how weakness has been developing over the last, 1 year and a half. And with Bitcoin dominance rising and forming higher highs, the strength indicators are forming lower highs, suggesting a lot of weakness. Now, again, we need a macro catalyst to change this and to validate these divergences that have been building up for the last 1 year and a half. And I think that in the upcoming weeks and months, we will see this macro catalyst, which I'll cover in a different video, as it is a very important topic in which I'll describe the current risk-on environment in which I think we're currently transitioning into, which implies a massive liquidity rotation from safe assets to risk assets. Moving on, we have the USDT Dominance. Now on the high time frame, we can clearly see some massive bearish confluences, such as this massive rising wedge that has formed in the past months, while Bitcoin has formed a falling wedge, which we'll get on later in this video. But what I want to tell you is that after it has retested this high time frame support range, so in my opinion, this should not be considered as a worry sign, but rather as a bullish indicator that we will sooner or later break this trend and start our correction. So we'll need the USDT dominance actually to go down and break this high time frame support range. So something along these lines would make the most sense. A short-term bounce followed by another steep correction to break this uptrend and start a downtrend that will send, well, Bitcoin as well as altcoins much higher than current prices. As I've covered in one of my threads on my X account, which if you follow me for a while, you most likely know that I post these regular threads in which I explain the cross-market confluences between traditional finance and safe assets such as gold, bonds, and so on. As I've covered in this thread, when Bitcoin was down to around 59k, I said that there were some massive bearish divergences that were forming on the USDT and USDC dominance charts. So these dominances are inversely correlated, so we need the USDT dominance to go down, signaling that investors are willing to take on more risks and that they are investing in Bitcoin and altcoins rather than keeping their money in stable coins. That's what we want to see as investors in the crypto market. Moving on to the USDC dominance chart. Now, as we can clearly see here, it has retested this massive support and has bounced, which led to a correction in the crypto market in altcoins as well as on Bitcoin. Now, as I've stated in some of my previous tweets, if you follow me on a daily basis, you most likely know that I'm cautious on the short term on Bitcoin. So what I would like to see on the USDC dominance chart is another rebound higher, such as this one, to retest this high time frame resistance range before we continue this massive downtrend that we are currently in and actually breaking below this support, which means a risk on environment for the markets. Moving on, we have the most important dominance of this video when we refer to altcoins, which is the others dominance. Now, as I've said earlier, it represents the dominance of the altcoins, excluding the top 10 by market capitalization. Now, as we can clearly see here, it has retested this massive high time frame support range while also testing this 7-year support, which every time we've seen a retest of this support, it led to massive outperformance of altcoins relative to Bitcoin. And that, I think, is going to happen next as well, as we most likely are in a high time frame bottom formation and chopping period such as this one before we actually see a massive rally in the others dominance, which will mean that altcoins perform extremely well and go completely parabolic relative to any other cryptocurrencies and assets, which is why I'm positioning myself at these levels when we are testing this high time frame bottom range and support, so I have altcoins to sell when we enter these top ranges such as this one, or maybe we go even higher than this. I personally don't know at this time. We'll see how the markets look at that point, and we'll know for certain whether or not we top or whether we go even higher from there. But in my opinion, altcoins are looking extremely well as the others dominance is currently testing this massive support range. Moving on, we have Ethereum. Now, as I've covered in one of my latest updates on it, I said that from a fundamental perspective, Ethereum looks incredibly bullish and looks ready to outperform Bitcoin. While everyone transitions away from it, it has underperformed for the past few weeks. Now, as we can clearly see here, it has broken above this resistance and successfully retested it. Now, if this holds, it will be a major sign that interest is shifting away from Bitcoin into Ethereum. So as I've covered in that tweet, I said that the Ethereum to Bitcoin ratio is testing a 3-year bottom, and that Ethereum is currently extremely undervalued going into the next project. Moving on, we have the most awaited part of this video. What are my current altcoin holdings and the projects that I've scaled into for the last few weeks? Now, before I begin, I want to mention that I'm not sponsored by any of these projects, and most importantly, before you invest in any of these altcoins, you should do a thorough due diligence and see the fundamentals behind the token and the chart before you invest. So, starting off with Filecoin. As we can see here, it is currently in this massive high time frame support range, which signals me an accumulation period in which market makers accumulate as much as they can in this bottom range before we see an aggressive takeoff. Similar to what we saw last year in September 2023 and October as well, when we had this first liquidity sweep under this key support range, which we've seen on 5th of August as well, followed by an accumulation period similar to what we are currently having now, and then followed by a massive run up, which we've yet to see until now. This is the main reason why I'm positioning myself into these projects and into these utility coins, which for the last 2 weeks have underperformed relative to their peers, such as meme coins or AI tokens, but I think that they will play a massive catch up into late Q4. Moving on, we have DOT, which is in a similar high time frame accumulation phase. As we can see here, a lot of chopping, and we are currently forming what seems to be a triple tap into the support range before we see the next run up. So I personally expect it to be very impulsive and very aggressive, similar to what we had last year when we had this downtrend followed by a small accumulation phase and then later on followed by a massive run up. Now, the longer the accumulation phase is, the more impulsive the breakout will be. So that's something we need to take into consideration when we see an over 4-month accumulation period in which this has bounced over and over again, signaling that market makers and whales are accumulating while others are panicking. In my opinion, over trading in this bottom range when we don't have a definite direction on the short term can lead to mistakes. And I personally advise you all to take a break from the short-term price action and to focus on the high time frame perspective, which is looking incredibly bullish. Moving on, we have Chainlink, which is following up on my prediction I shared on my Discord server over a week ago, as you can see in the following image, and has now rejected at this key resistance while approaching this high time frame support range again. So I'm personally expecting some more chop, some more bleeding along the way, followed by an aggressive breakout into late Q4. And as we can see here, it has formed a massive falling wedge on the high time frame while testing this high time frame support range as well. INJ, which on the short term has entered this 0.5 and 0.618 support range, which is a very good sign that it is currently testing this golden pocket. Now, the longer this chopping phase is, so the more we see something along these lines, the more aggressive the breakout will be. So this is, in my opinion, the best time to accumulate before we see this massive impulse up. Arbitrum, which is in a similar high time frame bottom formation after we had a long-term downtrend, signaling that this is most likely where we bottom before we see this aggressive impulse up. Moving on to AI tokens. The first one I want to show you is FED. Now, as you can see in the following tweet, I took profits when we were at $3 back in March, and back then I said I was waiting for 0.8 and $1 to be my next entries, and that happened in August. So then I scooped up a lot of coins. So now the price has dropped by around 30% since, and now I'm reaccumulating the project before we see a big impulse up. Personally expecting some more chopping in the upcoming days, followed by another impulse up, which will be extremely aggressive, similar to what we saw back in August and later on September. Moving on, we have ARC-M, which is currently retesting this massive high time frame support range. So again, if Bitcoin goes down short term, as I've mentioned earlier, I'm personally expecting some more bleeding or chopping in the upcoming days, followed by a strong recovery and impulse up. So in my opinion, positioning myself in this range while others are panicking over short-term price action is the best move to make. Moving on, we have Tau, which has been following my prediction on the short term to absolute perfection that I've shared in my Discord server, which you can see here on the screen, and has entered in the 0.32 and 0.5 zone, which I've mentioned that is my bid zone, and I look forward to make my final ads for this year in this range. Now let's talk about meme coins. Starting off with Peepa here, we can clearly see that it is currently up over 10x from the February lows, and everyone seems to be liking them a lot better than the rest of the altcoins, such as AI tokens or utility coins, which are testing bear market lows or have been in accumulation phases for the past few months. I'd rather buy a token that is on the lows rather than some meme coin that is currently, well, sitting here. I had some great plays back in May when there was a lot of euphoria. As you can see in the following tweet, I made over 3x on Peepa and then got out of the project, secured all of the profits, never looked back at the project since. Also, for more updates and analysis like this one, please make sure you join our Cryptic Trade server, in which you'll also find the free education section where I explain how I analyze the liquidity cycles, market psychology, technical concepts, and also how I manage my risk properly. Thank you all for watching this video. See you in the next one.